Are you ready to say goodbye to the constant ups and downs of the artist income roller coaster? Whether you're a full-time artist who wants to increase and stabilize your income, a part-time musician who wants to go full-time, or a hobbyist who needs to fund your passion projects, this podcast will equip you with the tools, resources, and inspiration to make it happen. My name is Bree Noble. I'm a musician, best-selling author, and educator whose mission is to help musicians like you to increase the income you're already making and tap into new income streams so you can create a more diverse, stable, reliable income from music and finally ditch the starving artist mentality. Now let's dive into the Profitable Musician Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Bree Noble, and I am happy to be here with Alvin Rostant. I'm going to say that correctly. It's French. Alvin Rostant. And we're going to be talking about his journey and some performing tips and things like that. He's actually in Australia, so I'm really interested to hear kind of some perspectives on being a performer in Australia. But before we get started, I'd love to have you tell your story, Alvin, and just kind of give people a sense of your music journey and how you got from there to here.
Well, started with my dad, actually. He was quite involved in the development of the steel pan, the steel drum. For the members of the audience who don't know what a steel drum is, it's an instrument that it's made from a 44-gallon oil drum, and it was invented in the island of Trinidad and Tobago down in the Caribbean. And it's used to play music. There's different instruments that they make to form a band. And so my father was part of that in the early days. And he was very serious. So if he brought a steel drum home, none of the kids can touch it. Otherwise, you get a spanking for touching his instrument. So anyway, I was never really interested in the steel drum. No, I did not live with my dad. I lived with his mom. So he used to visit, and I lived there. And so I used to go, when I turned a teenager, young teenager, I used to go to his workplace on a payday to get some pocket money. And this particular day, I went there, and they told me he had left work, and he went to the pan yard. Now, the pan yard is actually the rehearsal space for the steel band. Of course, in Trinidad, we call the steel drum steel pan, so we call it pan for short. So he was there, and I went over to get my pocket money, and I got there, and he was tuning a drum. Now, to tune the drum, it's all about hammering the metal to get the sound and all that. So he was there, he was engrossed in tuning this drum. So I had to wait, and I waited and waited and waited and waited. And while I was waiting, one of the section leaders came to me and said, "Do I want to play?" Now, it was at a time of the year where they had the yearly competitions that's called Panorama. This was going to take place. And for this, they take on new members because it's an outside event. And the bigger the band, the more solid the sound. So I thought, yeah, I'll have a go at this. And next thing you know, I was back there the following day. And that's where it started. I played for the competition. Then I played the following year again. And then I was approached by the band that was one of the lead head bands in Trinidad and Tobago at the time, which was in my neighborhood. I got approached by them to come and play for them. So a couple of years after that, moving forward, the band started to go out to tour. And I wasn't able to tour the first couple of years because I was still at school in high school. And I really wanted to. But I remember my English teacher telling me, finish your education before you do that. So anyway, come 1973, I decided that, I wasn't finished school, so I could tour. And I went on my first tour to the first place I played was in it was in Canada, in Montreal, Canada. And then after Montreal, we went to Toronto, Canada. And then we started a string of state fairs in the US. So we did like the Detroit, Michigan State Fair, the Dallas State Fair, and all the state fairs. We went around doing all that, Tulsa. And so that started happening. The following year, we went to Expo 74. Yes, Expo 74 in Spokane, Washington. And following that, the band then left and we came to Australia because we were booked to do to tour one of the states, which was South Australia. After doing that, well, our first concert was at the venue was the Her Majesty's Theatre, and we had members of the other states who came to have a look at what we had to offer. So after the first concert, we got booked by the rest of the states to tour the rest of the states of Australia. And so we did that over a couple of years. After that, during that time, I met with my ex-partner wife and decided to migrate and start life in Australia. After doing that, I was in Australia for maybe about 6 to 9 months, still playing music with an Australian band. But then things happened and I ended up joining the Australian Air Force. So there I was, joined the Australian Air Force. I was there for like maybe 6 months and I missed entertaining. So I started doing DJ work part-time and became very successful doing that, and had the permission of the Air Force to be able to do that. All at this time, I didn't have a steel drummer, so I was just depending on my voice, doing DJing and singing. And moving forward a little bit, I spent 6 years there. I was part of the drum corps as well. And after my 6 years was up, I got out of the Air Force and started back into music. Met some other Trini boys from Trinidad and we started a band and so on. However, in 1993, I did a government course that was able to give me a loan to start my business and to give me education and how to go about starting and running a business. And I kept going from there. But over the course of time, you know, different things took place and I had to diversify. So at one stage, I was touring the schools, high schools and primary schools, sort of telling them the story and teaching them about the steel pan and the steel drum. How it was invented. We give them examples of how it's actually made and tuned. We played songs for them, get them to get involved, to participate by singing or dancing. And I did that for 11 years. I also the government had a program where the people who were on welfare had to take part. And so they would give me one of these programs, and I had to develop a program a 6-month program for these people, which I did and was very successful. It was the first one of its kind where they actually used art as one of these programs. And at the end of the thing, we ended up getting a Prime Minister's Award for the project. And moving forward some more, I had different bands. I started recording my own music. And I suppose there's a lot of things that's happened between then and now, but here I am. Here I am, sort of writing, recording, and videoing my own music. And in saying that, music that I play, I try to add a Caribbean flavor. A Caribbean flavor would be the genre, or plus the sound of the steel drums automatically make it sound Caribbean. But you know, the different genres of the Caribbean, calypso, soca, reggae, zouk, that sort of thing. And so what I do, I take a normal song, another normal pop song, and play it in one of those genres. So it's got the Caribbean beat, but it's a pop song. And that type of thing. What else can I tell you?
Oh no, I love that you're doing that. You're basically doing cover songs and you're changing the genre
Yes,
to a Caribbean genre. And are you doing that live? Are you recording versions of those?
I haven't really. Yes, I have. I have recorded one or two. Most of my recordings are original music, but I have recorded one or two other songs that have changed the genre. Yes.
And what is the response to that when you're doing those live? Because it's like usually
Well, there
like,
was
they're hearing a song that they recognize, but then like it's in a totally different style.
yes. So it's fresh. It's they know that they recognize it, but it's in a different beat or whatever, and so they can connect with it because they know the melody.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So, today in your business, kind of what is the diversification of your income that you have as a musician right now?
All right. Well, look, because of the experiences I've had in the past, I found that I am able to cater for different type of audiences. So I have different type of bookings. One day it might be a corporate booking for the big telephone company, or it might be a school, it might be a public market, or it might be an intimate little thing at the library, a wedding, uh, birthday parties. So each one of these things, the audience would be different. And they would be, they expect a certain kind of a vibe. And I've got to find that vibe when I get there. And so that everybody can have fun, enjoy themselves, enjoy that time and space.
Yeah,
And
is there any like
from that,
set of questions that you ask people in advance, like so you can figure out what the right vibe is before you get there?
well, you haven't, from over the years of performing, I have an idea before I get there. Okay, if it's a wedding, I have an idea because I know how from previous weddings how they've been, how they went. Or if it's a market, I have an idea of what happens if I did a market, or if I did a corporate event. I have an idea of what they would like most times. And so I start there, and then you still got to read the audience as well to see, if because the thing about that is once you're pleasing your audience and you're pleasing the people who hire you, it can lead to rebook other bookings. And so in that way, by getting other bookings, you sort of you're earning more money.
Yep. And do you have any specific ways that you try to get more bookings when you're there? Like, do people just come up to you and ask you, do you do these kind of events? Do you have cards? Do you have QR codes? Do you have flyers? Like, what do you do to kind of promote yourself further for the next booking?
Well, QR codes is something I haven't got yet. However, I do have business cards. I do have Facebook and Instagram. on social media. You have music and videos on YouTube, um, music on Spotify, iTunes, and places like that. Um, and you know, to be totally honest, I in my early days I had to work a lot harder, but because of the time that I have spent in the industry and what I have, the amount of people have seen me, I get calls, I get emails on my website to for bookings. So I am most times the hard work's already done, so people sort of suss me out, you know, to find me and book.
Yeah, there's that beginning period where you have to get known, you have to do most of the work yourself, cold calls, coming up with, new types of venues you could find. And then, like you're saying, you're now reaping the benefits of that.
Yes, yes.
That's awesome. How much of your income would you say comes from live shows?
Live shows, maybe 95%.
Okay. And are you selling merch at shows?
Um, well, there was a time when the work I did, I worked at places where it was very heavily tourist areas. And in those areas, the sales of merchandise was very heavy.
Mm.
I earned a lot. But, but when you play into local audiences most of the time, it's not as lucrative. I'm just starting to look at social media and earning funds on social media. It took me a while to get into that, but I'm now doing it.
Do you have a fan email list?
um, I have, that's something that I don't have, a fan email list. Most of my fans follow me on are friends with me on Facebook and Instagram and these places. But
Well,
maybe that is something I should look at.
absolutely. I definitely you should because, who knows what might happen to any of those platforms, right? But if you've got any email list, you can always stay in touch with them.
For sure.
So, do you have any sense of performing in Australia? Like, what are the differences in kind of the live market there versus maybe the US or Canada?
I think one of those, the big difference is really the US and Canada have a larger Caribbean or West Indian communities. So what I do would be they would be attracted to what I do. A larger amount of people would be. There's not as many West Indian or Caribbean people here. The community is quite small compared to those other countries. So um, yeah, so you have to really you introducing most of the time. You're still introducing. After all the years, I'm still introducing because there's not many Caribbean entertainers here, and I've been myself and a few others, uh, quite a few others. I've been trying over the years to promote the Caribbean style and the Caribbean genres and everything. No, it's very accepted, but it's not as if it was as for instance, the radio stations don't play a lot of other genres. Other than, you get some American, you get Australian, and you might get UK. But the other genres from other countries are not very well played on the.
But you've been successful despite that. So that's awesome for you.
Yeah, that's hard work.
Yep, yep, you put in the work.
Yes.
And
Uh,
so do you find that like the places, like you said, that are that have more tourists, are they a little bit more interested in your music because it seems a little more familiar to them?
I think so. I think when you're a tourist, most tourists, when they're traveling, I think they try to have memories of the things they did or places they went. And so I find that people who are traveling and as a tourist, they want to collect these things, so they purchase things that would remind them of that trip, you know. So the music, you know, probably clothing or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they want to take something home with them, and
Exactly.
you had some stuff for sale and like, oh, we love this concert. Remember that? Let's take that home with us. Definitely. I definitely did that when I was in Europe. I bought more things like that than I normally would. So that makes
Right.
perfect sense. And how do you think your like stage presence has evolved over the years as far as just, having that stage banner interactive with the audience? Obviously you were doing schools, so that's always a tough crowd, right? You probably cut your teeth on that.
Well, the schools were, as a matter of fact, the schools were easy.
Mm.
Um, because the way we presented the program, we first of all, we started by using my name in the show was Banana Joe. So it's a funny kind of name. So we know kids would remember Banana Joe. And we had it during the show, we showed them a lot of stuff about where the drums came from. We started with a backdrop where we had the map and the flag so they can see this is where it's from. How it started, how it was invented, who started it, and what you do to actually make the instrument. And during all that, they get to dance, they get to sing, they get to clap, and uh, and they get to ask questions in the end. And so, they had at the end of the day, when the show is over, the kids have had fun, they have learned something, and you know, that's how it went.
And did that any of that transfer over into the way you do your shows now?
Uh, I think the way I was taught, because the man who toured the band I toured around with in Canada, Australia, and many other countries, he actually was a very successful businessman, and he transferred it to this by sponsoring this band and taking it around the world and taught us a few things. For instance, in the early days of steel pan playing, the players were more focused on playing, showing people that you can play this new instrument that's made from a 44-gallon drum like a normal instrument, like a conventional instrument, a piano or guitar. And so the tuning of the drums, for instance, had to be 440, like a normal instrument. So he taught us that when you're performing and you're on stage, you have to convey a sort of vibe to the person, whether it's a sad vibe, a happy vibe, or some, whatever it is. You have to convey those things to the audience. Uh, but in the early days, the players were just focusing on this instrument that can do what a piano can do or guitar can do. So they didn't, the most they would do is tap their feet to be in time. So they wouldn't dance, they wouldn't do any choreography, they wouldn't smile, for instance. And so we were taught that, okay, first of all, when you're playing a song like when you're smiling, the whole world smile, you gotta smile.
Seems obvious.
Yeah, exactly. But in the older days, they would play it and be serious. But they took everything seriously. So when we started to tour, I was in a group of younger players. But the older players who, you know, they always say, don't, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. It was like that. The older guys was not, they would not dance, they would not move, they would not smile. The most you can get them to do is tap their feet. So the band that started touring, the guy who managed the band would choose the younger players who were more looking at, well, I was in that bunch of people, and what we were looking at when we go to perform, it was in the mid 70s. So you found that there were, we would see people like Sly and the Family Stone and all these American acts and the Beatles and look at what they were doing. And we thought, yeah, they're moving, they're engaging the people and they're dancing and they're doing. So we thought, well, yeah, this is the way to go. And so I took that to heart, and I'm still doing that and trying to teach that to young people. Because there's still young people who don't have that side of things. How important it is.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, we aren't just musicians, we're entertainers.
Of course, we storytellers too.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of stories, I would love to know, what is the best advice that you've ever gotten around your music career or anything?
Well, there's a couple of things comes to mind. And one is what we just talking about, show emotion, to get your story, help get your story across. What was the other thing? It slipped my mind now. But yeah, mainly getting your story across, not only by playing the instrument or singing, but by by showing the emotion that you want the audience to feel. If you want to feel, it's like one of the things that the manager used as an example was, he said, "No, you guys look at Elvis Presley. When Elvis Presley finishes a song, it's a big finish. It's always a big finish." So these are the type of things that we were taught that help you to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what advice do you have to the people listening that will help them be more profitable as a musician?
Well, if you've got to, it's a different world today with social media, and but the thing is to growing your audience. Can't remember the word I'm thinking of, but if you grow your audience in such a way where you attract a certain type of people who are looking for what you have to offer. And if you could push what you have to offer very strongly, you find that the people who you attract, or the people who like your stuff, will just come, and you kind of help you build it. What's the word? Generic.
Yeah, no, you be unabashedly you, right? But
Yes.
be the thing that you are good at, and the people that want to hear that will come.
Well, sort of, yes.
Makes absolute sense. Well, you've been talking about social media, so how can people find you on your social media channels?
All right. Well, look, I am on Facebook as Alvin Rostant _ Alvin Rostant Babash Band. So Alvin Rostant Babash Band, and on Instagram, Alvin Rostant _ Babash Band, and my website is babashband.com. babash.band. And those are the places you can find me. You can also find, I've got some videos on YouTube under Alvin Rostant. So those are the places you can find.
Got it. And you have some music on Spotify?
Yes, I have music on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud. Yes, so I have original music, mainly similar genre, reggae, soca, calypso.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all your experience. You've been in the game a long time. And like you said, you put in the work. So congratulations that you are, you don't have to do cold calls anymore. You got people calling you for bookings. So congratulations on that. And thank you so much for sharing all your experience with our listeners.
Oh, thank you very, very much. I appreciated this.
Thanks for listening to the Profitable Musician Show. I would love to know your takeaways and aha moments from this episode. Leave me a comment over at profitablemusician.com so I can bring you more of the information, interviews, and resources that you love. Thanks to Rondi Faye, one of my Academy members, for providing the music for our podcast. You can check her out at rondifay.com. That's RANDIFAY.com. Just remember, knowledge is power, but without implementation, it is useless. And inspiration without action is merely entertainment. But I know you're not just a dreamer, you are a doer. And I promise I'll be here every week to support you and remind you that you can be a profitable musician.